Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Green Home NYC's Green Entrepreneurship. My name is Crystal, and I'll be your moderator for today. We have a great group of panelists with us. We're going to be discussing innovation in the green sector. We're going to be discussing common hurdles and motivations for wanting to start a career in the green space. So hopefully after this presentation, you'll leave inspired and wanting to start your own career or business in the green space. So without further ado, I'll have our panelists introduce themselves and tell us what they do. So Anne-Marie.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Awesome. So my name is Anne-Marie Bola. I own a training and consulting company called Enhanced Building Solutions. And what I saw over the years is that the biggest reason for inefficiencies in some of the buildings and facilities was that the staff wasn't being properly trained. What I had noticed over the years was that it was more of a tribal method where everyone was expected for the person before them to teach them something, and there wasn't a formalized way of actually training individuals. And because of that, I saw how many operators were actually using the YouTube. And so it was basically, it was a YouTube inspired concept that I created training videos so that facilities operators can actually search for what it is that they need, and they would get the content. Videos is not something that's not used, but it wasn't very organized. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Awesome. All right, Crystal, please tell us about yourself and what you do.
Hey guys, I'm Crystal, and I work with early stage pre-seed startups at Cleantech Open Accelerator, which is the largest clean tech accelerator in the world. And I leverage my experience working in the energy sector to help these startups get to a place where they have a viable business model. And that entails understanding their customers and also the markets that their products could potentially operate in, and even to pitch to VC and angel investors in a way where their financial model makes sense and is appealing to these investors.
Awesome. Okay, so Mike, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike. I'm the Vice President of Engineering and one of 3 co-founders at Sunkeeper Solar. We're an EPC firm focused on building distributed energy systems in and around New York City. EPC means engineer, procure, construct. So we design things, we buy all the materials, and we build them. And then we operate and maintain them on the back end. I had been in the energy industry for about 8 years before I started my own company. And really came to it because I saw what a big opportunity there was for solar and for other kinds of distributed generation in New York. And really a small number of contractors serving that market. And so it seems to us like a really great space to be in. And that's what led to the decision to found the company.
So Suzanne, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Suzan Hernandez. I'm founder and CEO of MamaP. It's a sustainable CPG company, and really what that is are consumer product goods ranging from like toothbrushes, shampoo and conditioner bars, hairbrushes, really everyday essentials that are typically made of plastic. We make sustainably using natural materials that are compostable or recyclable if needed. And then our company, MamaP, we give back 5% of our sales to different nonprofits. And our mission is to help people live a healthy and balanced life, add purpose to their life, but also ensure that we're taking care of the planet. My background, I have over 15 years of retail, consumer, go-to-market experience, working at companies like Nike, in fashion, P&G, and I really wanted to take the product innovation or consumer products and turn it into something good, to help people do good and live better every day.
Awesome. Thank you for giving us all a little bit about your background and the companies that you started and entrepreneurs that you've worked with. So we're gonna move on to the next question. We're gonna be talking about what inspired you to work in this space, to start your own company, to work, to be an innovator, and to work with innovators. So we're gonna start with Anne-Marie. We're gonna come back to you, and we're gonna have you tell us what inspired you to start your company.
I think on my side, it was something more of a problem that I saw, and I really found that the building efficiency was being lost due to, untrained staff, and it was something that I experienced where I felt like there was a knowledge hoarding, and I wanted to give an opportunity so that it was sort of like a win-win situation. How can you create a product or something that an owner or whoever it is that you're selling to will actually buy into the idea? For years, people saw training, especially their staff, as a nice to have. But when I brought up the number of people who were retiring, in addition to the minimal staff, in addition to high turnover, I saw this as a problem that was going to affect a lot of buildings. And it's sort of like we can do all of the design and preparation and everything to have all of the energy models done. But if you're not training the staff properly, then all of your projected efficiencies wouldn't be real numbers. And so that was kind of like the real inspiration.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. So Crystal, what inspired you to work with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so it's actually very exciting working with these startups to get them to viable business models. For me personally, it's to see these different technological innovations that they're presenting. And we really need that because of the energy transition and the money that's going into investing in climate tech, to really be very collaborative. And I think that in an accelerator environment, there is a lot of those opportunities for collaboration to bring these ideas into fruition. And it also takes a lot of skill in terms of identifying what are the weaknesses that and how to address them. For example, maybe a specific company has founders who are very technical, and so they have gaps in understanding the business aspects, and that would be a roadblock for commercializing their product. So what we really try to do there is to help them figure out ways where they can address those weaknesses and turn them into opportunities and be able to pitch to investors so that they can get the capital they need to continue moving on with their business. So in that aspect, that's very motivating for me as somebody in the clean tech and energy industry.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, all right. So Mike, can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start your company?
Sorry, it was on mute. I think it was multifaceted. I don't know that I can point to one particular thing. I touched a little bit on the opportunity that I and my business partners saw in and around New York City. We had all worked, in the energy space for many years and had worked together building, solar and other DG systems for many years. And, it really is, there's a confluence of factors that make it a great opportunity. It's a very difficult market to operate in because of all the regulation in New York City. But there's also tremendous opportunity. I think a lot of you probably know that, the prices for solar have come down almost tenfold, in the last decade. The prices for energy storage and other, important enabling technologies are starting to do the same thing. And at the same time, lots of new laws have been passed that are creating more and more opportunities. I mean, the business case for solar and DG in New York City has never been better than it is right now with community solar and some of the other programs that exist. And there are some local laws like Local Law 97, which regulates emissions in buildings, and Local Laws 92 and 94, which require solar on new construction, major renovations that have come into place. And, all those things together, make it seem to us like there's really a lot of runway and a lot of room for growth and a lot of opportunity. On the personal side, I also really enjoy doing things really well. I enjoy having the freedom to build things to, a really high level of quality. And I enjoy wearing, a lot of different hats, which is, it's something, if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, I would encourage you to get comfortable wearing a lot of different hats. And hopefully learn to enjoy it, because, I get to be an accountant some days I get to be an engineer, some days I get to be a construction worker, which I find to be fun. And, that's the ability to do all those different things and really sort of create something is definitely part of what motivated me to start the business.
Awesome. So I definitely agree that solar is needed in New York. I mean, we're a huge city, and there's just, we run on terrible energy, and, with climate change happening, yeah, solar is definitely the industry to definitely be in. All right. So Suzanne, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you started MamaP?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Los Angeles, and growing up near the ocean and nature, having a connection with the earth, respecting the planet, respecting nature has always been part of who I am. When I was working at Nike, I was living in Portland, Oregon. So, I mean, they are leaders in a lot of sustainability. And it got really comfortable living there. And I relocated with them to New York City. And I had a very drastic change. Being sustainable in the city was really hard. It was a very hard transition for me. And I felt that the challenge, if I'm having this challenge in one of the biggest cities, in the world, how are other people experiencing this, hardship, trying to move to be more sustainable across the country, in the US, in small town America, in up north, whatnot. And so I thought, and I've always had entrepreneurship in my blood. I went to business school. I studied entrepreneurship. I designed my own major, picked up some minors, so I've always had this kind of entrepreneurship in me. And I thought, you know what, no one's doing really anything. This was, like 5 years ago. No one's really doing anything with sustainability products well, so like functionally well. The products that were on the market were really boring. They were really basic. They didn't feel good when you used it, and it felt like you were compromising. And so I designed my own bamboo toothbrushes and eventually designed my own products that were functionally comparable to the plastic equivalents, that looked really nice, had design built in, so it sparked joy in your life. And then we give back with each color as well. So making sure that we supported the community and having people choose their color, and that chooses the cause that we donate to. So we have 6 different causes, because it's not just about only sustainability, it's also social impact. So we support ocean conservation, saving the bees, mental health awareness, women's rights, LGBTQ plus equality, and criminal justice reform. And we also offset our carbon footprint by donating to the Ocean Foundation, Seagrass Grow. And so really building a company that encompassed these values that I felt people really cared about, but they had to kind of, do it themselves. I wanted to create a company that really people could come to and they know they're doing good just by simply using our products every day. And in turn, it also inspired them, whatever cause people choose, it inspires them to also like make changes in their life that day. So, we hear from people when they, use the ocean conservation collection, which is our blue collection, they might think in that day, like, what can I do to support a healthy ocean? Or if it's mental health awareness, they might say, what can I do to support my own mental health or the mental health of others today? And so really, I wanted to create this company that inspired people to do good in their own way. And also, a company that really took the onus to do a lot of this research, remove plastics in the supply chain, offset our carbon footprint as much as possible, remove toxins from our line, and really just make beautiful products. So that's kind of how everything inspired me. And Pachamama, which is Incan for Mother Earth, inspired our name. So that's where MamaP came from.
Oh, that's awesome. I definitely relate to that, wanting to start something with value in mind and like ethics behind it. Especially in the city, it's so hard to try to do anything sustainably here because there's just, there's not that much green. There's, it's just not the space for that. So creating a company around, finding sustainability around, the city, love that. Okay, so our next question we're going to be talking about common hurdles that you face starting your company, and mistakes to avoid for future entrepreneurs looking to start their own company. So we're going to go back to Anne Marie. So tell us a little bit about the common hurdles that you faced starting your company and mistakes to avoid for future entrepreneurs.
I think I see a lot of I get a lot of questions from others about if they're who are interested in starting a business. I have to say that the one thing that I did, which is probably unconventional, right? I ended up I started working at a startup company, and I didn't have that on the plan when I first started. And I think it actually helped a lot because it gave me the opportunity to learn how to sell. As an engineer, I don't think I had much experience in selling. And it gave me the opportunity to even validate my idea. So when I would make my phone calls and I was selling the mobile app that, for the company that I was working for, I would ask the people, so what is your training like? And of all of the people who I would speak to, from chief engineers to owners to property managers to everyone, a lot of them didn't have a formal training program. And it was the one thing that probably gave me the validation. Now, initially, I think I was kind of sure, but I really wasn't. I didn't have solid evidence. But using that as a stepping stone, it actually helped. So I would say that there needs to be validation for what it is that you're selling or the idea that you have. And I think, as far as hurdles, there is a lot of networking that needs to be done. There's a lot of, being able to handle rejection. I think you have to get a lot of no's before you get yeses, but sometimes just creating that tenacity within yourself. And I think a lot of people aren't prepared for that because not everybody's going to say yes. And I think with LinkedIn and social media and a lot of things now, we have the opportunity where if we create a post and we are strategic in writing that post, and based on the people who actually like it or respond to it, you now have an idea of people if there's an interest. And I started off by writing blogs. And then from the blogs, I actually started doing video. And then from that, in conjunction with going to events and doing things out of the normal. I mean, one of the things that I did was I joined my alumni association board, and it gave me the opportunity to meet more people. But what I would also do is, instead of playing golf at some of the events, I would volunteer to drive the bear cart, because I knew that you would become the most important person when people are playing golf and they want to drink. So everyone got to know my name. So it's all these different ways that you can seek to be strategic in what it is that you do. And I think the biggest misconception with a lot of people is that, that, the business is going to come right away. And the reality is that it doesn't. You have to be prepared that your first year, you really don't even know what you're doing. The second year, you may get some business. The third year is when people say, all right, well, this person really seems like they're being consistent. You know what? Let me try them out. And then the fourth year is when, you kind of start seeing some, significant sales. And then by the fifth year, if you have a viable product or not. One of the reasons why they say businesses will last 5 years is for that primary reason. And I guarantee you, I've seen it firsthand. And yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if I really shared pitfalls, but I think I started my business when I was 40. And I've been in the business now for 5 years. And exactly what my business coach that I hired in the beginning, it kind of explained to me so that I would be prepared and not get disappointed when things weren't happening immediately. I think that actually helped me.
I think that's really great advice, because a lot of people start businesses and when the first years, I've heard, is usually the hardest year, and they tend to get, very depressed and, down on themselves. So they, knowing that you really have to stick with it for at least 5 years to really see your business blossom, I think it's really great advice. So Crystal, why don't you tell us what you've seen with entrepreneurs and some common hurdles they faced, and what mistakes you think they should avoid?
Yeah, so I mentor startups, but I have to say I really have seen the points that Anne Marie made. I really love it because she actually experienced it firsthand. So I'm just going to be elaborating as like somebody who mentors from that perspective, basically on the same points that she made, because it's what I've seen as a mentor, especially about the sales. I think that is a recurring area for work, because I think sometimes it has to do with you have to be a tenacious person. Like sometimes some entrepreneurs go into it knowing that there's going to be rejections, but it's just hard for them to get into that mindset of the reality versus understanding it theoretically when they're at the very beginning. And then there are some who I don't think they know what sales is, because they maybe come from like a technical background. So they've just spent a lot of time thinking of a product. And so these kinds of hurdles all connect back to how to do your own sales and be able to market what it is you're building, and also being able to adapt. So that's like the addition that I would like to add on to Anne Marie's response is, in addition to being able to handle the rejection, you also need to be able to analyze it, meaning that they may reject you to tell you no, but in that answer, they may have said some things that you can kind of sift out, and it's not really a concrete no. It's more like, these are really big weak areas in your product, and if you were able to fix those weaknesses, someone else may say yes. So being able to really analyze that and move forward is really key. And I think that when entrepreneurs are able to get that understanding, it really takes them to the further steps along their entrepreneurial journey.
That is so right. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs forget about the sales aspect of starting a business. I mean, you have to be a great salesperson, you have to sell to um, your your investors, you have to sell to your customers. And yeah, I think that, that's something that has to be told. If you're going to start a business, you're going to have to really, get used to rejection and get used to, um, get used to, oh, DJ, can you please mute your mic? All right. Okay, so Mike, tell us about some hurdles that you've experienced starting, and some mistakes you think new entrepreneurs should avoid.
Yeah. I think one important mistake to avoid is thinking that you have to do it all yourself. Um, Anne Marie talked about having a coach. We've talked a little bit about, how important sales is, which, I will support 100%. But I am not a natural salesperson. And, I think it's important to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are and find ways to try and supplement them, whether that's through partners that you're co-founding a business with, or whether that's through coaches. Or, in some cases, I've found that people are willing to be really generous with their time and with their experience. And, if you're having a hard time with something, don't be ashamed to call someone up, who used to be your boss or who used to be at a company you worked with, and say, I'm having, a really hard time figuring out how to hire XY type of person, or I'm having a really hard time, trying to figure out how to sell this service or this product. And, most people are surprisingly willing to help you out and to give you their time and experience with that sort of stuff. And don't think that as an entrepreneur, you need to just sort of, soldier on in the darkness by yourself and figure it out and solve every problem, because there's millions of people out there who have started businesses and, who haven't started businesses, but have solved, a lot of the same problems that you're dealing with. I think it depends a little bit on the kind of company that you're working on, but I do think that it's really important to, if you're not already, to try and gain some financial fluency, to understand how, accounting works and how to read a balance sheet. And, it sounds really boring, and a lot of times it is really boring. But I think, many people get caught up in the big picture stuff, and it's easy to take your eye off the ball and not pay attention to the minutia of operations. And it's sort of like you have to, it's not the most glamorous thing, but it's something that you have to be proficient in and pay attention to. And then the other thing that I'll say, and again, this may not apply to everyone, but particularly if you don't have investors or you don't have a lot of startup capital, don't sell things at a loss. And that sounds like a pretty intuitive, obvious thing to say. But as Anne Marie was saying, it's going to take time for sales to come, and there's going to come a time in year one or year two where there's no sales, there's not enough sales, and you get really desperate to bring some money in the door. And so many people give into the temptation to cut their margins, or even sell things at a loss, and that's just that's such a slippery slope, and you do that for long enough, and there's just no way to recover from it. So, be, as Anne Marie said, be resilient, be patient, and believe, know what the value of what you're selling is, and believe in that value, and don't give it away. Sell it for what it's worth.
I think that's really great advice. Everything that you talked about, I definitely think mentors are a must, especially if you're a new entrepreneur and you have no idea, how to start a business, and like you talked about with finance, you have no idea how any of this stuff works and how to turn a profit. I definitely think that mentors are very needed. And this forum also is, another way of giving people advice who are here to learn about, starting their own business in the green space. I mean, advice is, you're definitely going to need that when you're starting a business, because there's always going to be those things where you're just like, I should have, could have, would have, but if I knew. So yeah, love that advice. Okay, Suzanne, can you tell us a little bit about some hurdles that you faced and advice you'd give to new entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I mean, I just have to say that, Anne Marie, Crystal, and Mike, I mean, everything that you all had talked about, been through the same thing, feel so heard or like validated, because like entrepreneurship, it's not the easy road. You're building your own path, and you have to be uncomfortable with with uncertainty, with living in the gray area. And not everyone is cut out for that, and that's okay. And there are also entrepreneur roles, which is like innovation within a company that's also available for people. So entrepreneurship is not always like the end all be all to be creative or innovative. But just so everyone knows that you can do innovation or intrapreneurship within companies. So I think just to kind of throw that out. I think the funny thing is, so I know sales is important, and philosophy we have at MamaP. So we sell to a lot of retailers and wholesalers. Is with me and my VP of sales, I help with new business as well. But a no, it's not no forever. It's no, comma, no for now. So we know that we'll circle back in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, and we follow up. We are very persistent to stay on people's radars. And what we're seeing now, year 4, in some cases, it's taken 3 years to break into these regional stores or chain stores. It's taken 3 years to get there, and now the floodgates are opening up because it's the right time. Come past COVID. COVID was really challenging. There was a lot of uncertainty there, and just kind of going back to being okay in the gray area. During COVID, in the first 6 months of the pandemic, we didn't know if our business was going to survive. And we're like, you know what? The most important thing for us is to check in with our customers, build community, and just do what we do best. And the rest, we'll see what happens. And just by taking a pause and going back to our mission, our values, that actually set us up for success. And a lot of our customers are still with us today, the ones that, survived the pandemic, because we had built those relationships. And they've even helped us to get into, national distributors, which has further just helped, expand our business. So I think, while things are challenging, sometimes you need to pause and just take a step back and focus on your North Star, focus on your mission and your values, and let that guide you. Because it's really easy to make decisions that are just kind of like, oh shoot, what do we do? Let's just do this. Sometimes you just really need to take that pause before you can decide and really know, how to move forward. And also thinking short-term, midterm, and long-term. So the other point that someone had brought up, I think it was Crystal, I think you had mentioned this, but sometimes you need to adapt. Now, the challenge that I had in the beginning, I had a mentor help guide me, but as an entrepreneur, And as a founder or a CEO, usually you are going faster than your team can catch up. And you have to be mindful that yes, you need to adapt, but you also need to make sure that your team understands the vision, they have clear goals, they have frameworks, they understand their roles and responsibilities to help move towards that direction. So you can't just keep pivoting every few weeks or every few months, but you have to be very mindful of when you pivot. And if you do pivot, to make sure that the organization can move with you. So it's really important to, as you're innovating, as you're thinking of this new whatever you're doing, to also be mindful of your team and making sure that they're able to follow you as well. And I think there's also something with like entrepreneurs. You'll have a lot of vision of like, oh, we should be doing this. And there's a lot of pie in the sky thinking, but not always a lot of executing. And so I think, something like there's so many opportunities. People will come to you with opportunities all the time. Customers, consumers, friends, family, investors, whatnot. And as an entrepreneur, you have to also understand like, what is your mission? What is your vision? What is the plan? Does that fit within the plan now? And then how do you execute against that? Because ideas are like a penny for your thoughts. Anyone can have an idea, but to actually get behind that and build a plan and execute, align your team, resources, operations, and process behind that, it takes time to do that as well. And I think the last thing that I'll say is your network is so valuable. So people will give you feedback and you'll always want to thank them for that feedback. But at the end of the day, oftentimes as an entrepreneur, you have a vision, something that people may not quite understand. And so you have to balance your gut with feedback from people. And I think that's the challenge that, there's no right or wrong answer. But I can tell you when I first started my company, people told me, no one's going to buy a toothbrush. You should think of a different product. Well, our bamboo toothbrush product line represents like 50% of our sales right now as our foundation. And it's allowing us to crack open doors with mass retailers and then upsell with our other products. So had I listened to everyone at the beginning, I may not have started MamaP. But because I had a vision of a company with values, offering a different type of product and giving back, it was a very different vision than what was in the market at that time. So I think, at the end of the day, if you have a vision, listen to it, get people's input, but also at the end of the day, like make sure that you're staying true to yourself and true to what you're seeing, this thing that you're going to build in the future.
That's such great advice. Yeah, because if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a lot of grit because there's always going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be gray areas, gray uncertainty, and you have to be very organized. You have to manage your team very well, and you have to almost learn how to tune in the nose. But be realistic so that you can have a profiting business. Yeah, I definitely agree with your advice. Oh. All right, so we're gonna move on to talking about being in the green sector and different types of opportunities that you see for innovation. We're going to go back to Anne-Marie. Being in the green sector, what industries do you see rising, and what do you see for entrepreneurs wanting to pursue something in the green space? I'm not sure if that made any sense. Let me know.
No, I understand. I think obviously for everyone's business, they are focused on something else, right? Or different aspects of the things that they see. I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on what Mike had said about, kind of not lowering your prices. I will share this. initially when I first started, I felt like I was underpricing myself, and I did. But there are ways to get out of that. And the thing that I would suggest that you do, always give your pie in the sky number. And it's always better to go down than to go up. And you can always drop your price and say, look, I'd be willing to do this at a discounted rate because it's the first time that I'm working with you. But just know that to expect X in the future. So I think that's going to be a concern when it comes time to people pricing if they're first starting up, because I think that was my biggest challenge. And remember, products and services are two different, aspects of the business, right? When there's something that's tangible, and then there's something where you're actually giving your time. So really, like, understanding that is important too. What I've come to realize is that I've had people now who are willing to pay me like a really high amount, and I've said no to them. And it feels great to be at a spot now that I can say no, just because if you have 10% of your customers causing you 90% of your pain, you need to let them go. And so that you can focus on the more important things. But sometimes you don't know that, because in the beginning, you kind of have to take everybody. When you get to the point where you're actually, generating continuous business, then you can potentially walk away. So that's just some advice that I want to share. As far as innovation and technology and, the future, I think for the next couple of years, we're going to see an increase in products that are going to serve for clean rooms and environments and, sustainable products. How can we minimize waste? These are the things that are a big concern to people. I think when it comes to, if we are going to be mentors and we really want to serve the public or the future generation, we have to look at the problems that we're having right now. Right now, we are having a problem with people wanting to come back into the workspace. So how are companies going to motivate their staff to come back in, right? What are they going to offer them to incentivize that? Can they create a model where it can be work from home, where you can now satisfy that? And I obviously, like I said, I'm thinking from a workforce development. I see the innovators when it comes to technology. I think they need to go out into the field and actually see how people are working in the field and figure out ways on how they can potentially even create a virtual environment where they're kind of like working on robotics, where they're, moving, robots in the field to do the work, the laborious work that people don't want to do. Those are just, things that I see again from my sector of the industry. And another just advice that I want to throw out there, wherever you go, and no matter who you speak with, your goal is to listen more than you speak, because people will tell you their problems. And if you cannot solve the problem, then they kind of, it's sort of, you have to tell people what it is that they want, but then eventually give them what it is that they need. So that's just kind of like some of my thoughts there.
That's really great advice. If anybody in the audience is looking to start a business, this is like really great advice that you're getting from our panels. You might not be able to, get a mentor to sit down with you every day. But you're getting great advice from people who are in the green field. So I would take notice.
Crystal, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh, Crystal. So what about you? You work with entrepreneurs. What industries and what sectors do you see rising in the next, now and in the future?
Yeah, so I think that there's just a lot of exciting activity in general in the energy space. There's so much excitement from people who are in the industry right now and people who want to transition in, because there's so many different areas you can play in. The area that I'm really interested in within energy is right now transportation. I think the timing is really good for this sector in particular, if you're trying to bring an emerging technology or some type of business model innovation to this space, because I think that there's a lot of regulatory support as well, and I think that trajectory is going to continue. I have mentored a startup that is working specifically on maritime vessels, and that type of transportation is very interesting because they account for a significant portion of greenhouse gas emissions, actually more than airplanes. So it's been really interesting looking at alternative fuel sources. And again, it's not just a technical problem, it's also a regulatory issue. For example, if you're trying to build this type of vessel, first of all, there's the technological barriers because you're introducing a new fuel source and you need to prove that it's just as good or better as whatever is in the market right now. And also you need to understand what are the different regulatory environments for where you would deploy this. And that would be very important, especially for your first proof of concept. So that's been really interesting. And then me personally, I work in EV charging. So that's also a very exciting area to be in because, again, the timing is really right for that. There are lots of EVs being designed and manufactured, and I think that's just going to continue. So all this activity in this space, I think, is really pushing things forward to a decarbonization of the transportation sector.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that transportation is like, like the big push in green right now. And definitely, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are flooding into that space because, we're in the age of, clean tech, clean energy. And yeah, if you are someone who can solve that problem, not only are you gonna, make a great, contribution to society at large, but you're going to be very profitable. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Mike. So you've been in the solar industry for a while now. What are there any subsets that you think need to be addressed that can have entrepreneurs come in and innovate?
Yeah, I think I'll speak to the sort of the distributed generation industry at large, not just solar, but I think there's been tremendous interest and growth in energy storage in the last couple of years. We went from, probably 3 years ago having less than 1 megawatt of energy storage in the interconnection queue in, New York City, which is the area that we predominantly operate in, to this year having something like 300 megawatts in that queue. So that's, you do the math, that's a pretty significant rate of growth. I think that, EV charging is just, in the last year or so starting to, be on the same sort of exponential growth curve as some of that energy storage technology. And I think, an interesting opportunity is that as a lot of this stuff gets deployed and as energy, production and storage, and in some cases consumption, like with EVs, gets more distributed, I think you're finding a lot of real estate owners who are, inadvertently or unwillingly becoming, participating in the energy business. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, on the, business to business service side, on the software side, on the operations and maintenance side to sort of help real estate companies deal with this change that they're experiencing, where they're no longer just real estate companies, they're now real estate companies and energy companies. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. The other thing that I think will be a huge opportunity is adapting to climate change. And I'm sorry to say that I think we are well past the point of averting damage due to climate change. And, we're now living in, right now this year, living in a time where we need to be thinking about how we're going to be focused on averting and mitigating the worst impacts of it. I don't know how many people here live in New York or were in New York in the last couple of weeks, but we got a few different times in a few different weeks got some of the most rain that New York City has ever received, and it completely ground the city's infrastructure to a halt. And what do you do when the entire sewer system of a city, or the entire transportation of a city, is based on assumptions about the climate that are no longer accurate? And that's a scary thing to think about, but I also think that it presents enormous opportunity for people who are looking to start businesses, because you have billions or trillions of dollars of real estate that is going to be worthless if people can't figure out how to deal with the new normal in terms of the climate. And I think that people who can come up with products and services that that help people adapt to climate change are going to do really well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I wasn't in New York, thank God, when there was that big snowstorm, rainstorm. But I definitely did hear about it from a lot of my friends about like the flooding and the subways, going down. So I definitely think you're right about infrastructure. Infrastructure is definitely the key because, unfortunately, the weather isn't probably going to get that much better, and we really do need to start thinking more about securing our infrastructure, which a lot of people haven't really paid that much attention to, which I think is probably one of the most important things in the green space. If we can't secure our infrastructure, how are we gonna? We can't live with this. Like you said, like the new normal with climate change, we're not going to be able to survive it. So yeah, I definitely think infrastructure is definitely something that hasn't gotten a lot of attention and needs a lot more. Um, so Suzanne, working in retail, what industries or sectors do you see blossoming in your sector?
Yeah, so I mean, so I'll take the consumables, consumer product goods approach, but I see the biggest opportunities right now having access across the country to composting sites, to recycling as a last resort, and to having recycled materials be used in products, and doing it in factories that have that are energy efficient, so solar, wind power, or whatnot. Really thinking through the entire supply chain. What can be adjusted, and how do we do that? I think people inherently want to do good, but it's really hard. It's really hard to do that. And we can't control big companies at this point. That's a whole nother monster. And there can be pressure by not purchasing goods from companies that we know might be doing harm to the environment. As a way to take a stand. But I really, really believe that access to compost is really important. We hear from our consumers, so like our packaging is plastic free. Like our toothbrushes are 95% plastic free. The only thing that we can't change on the toothbrushes are the bristles, because there hasn't been innovation to replace the nylon bristles with something that is okay for your health, like your enamel and your gums, but also is good for the environment, aside from boar's hair, but that's not vegan. So there are these, I'd say, kind of smaller innovations that can happen. But I really think that from a consumer standpoint, changing the way that people consume products in their lives can have lasting impact. and can also force companies, big companies, to start rethinking how they're selling. So that's from, I'd say like reducing packaging. So if we think through the supply chain, when you ship products, the more space you take on a truck, the less you can ship, right? So when you ship products that have a lot of packaging, a lot of stuff in it, things that are not necessary, you use more fuel, right? Which most of the time is fossil fuel. Also trying to strip away weight in packaging. That's something that I've been obsessed with. How do I ship my products as light as possible and as little packaging as possible? Because that helps to reduce fuel costs and weight, not just shipping from factories, but also shipping to consumers. And then also ensuring that our products are in plastic free so that it can be composted. But we hear from people that not a lot of people have access to commercial composting sites or community composting sites. And so we get a lot of questions like, so what do we do? I live in an apartment, there's no community compost. What do we do with all this packaging? We know that like cardboard isn't really recycled. There's really not a market for that in most cities. So what do we do and how do we solve for that? So I really think, and this might be more on the social good aspect of innovation, but helping us use waste efficiently, and also using less energy to reuse that waste. That's something that I'm really passionate about. And then I think the other part of it is restoring our oceans, because the ocean, we people say we're on planet Earth, but we're really on planet ocean. The majority of our planet is the ocean, and we know that oceans have a major impact on the climate as well, and they can also help to slow down climate change. And so I really am passionate about more of the social good aspects, environmental innovation, and ways that we can help restore land, especially the oceans.
Yeah, I definitely share your passion with the ocean, because it's just so sad to see how much pollution, how much plastic is in the ocean, and it's all coming from first world countries. We have a huge waste problem, and we don't have efficient ways to recycle and to compost. And that's definitely something that we're gonna have to learn to innovate on, because we only have so many resources, and if we don't learn to reuse them, we're gonna run out of resources, and then what?
So so I think it's the ocean also sequesters the most carbon. So if you think of like what makes the climate warmer, carbon, right? Having more carbon in the atmosphere. So the ocean is the largest thing that sequesters carbon. It means that it removes it from the environment and it stores it in the ocean floor. It doesn't do any damage to the ocean when it does that, and that's what seagrass and some other plant life does. So having a healthy ocean actually helps to cool the earth.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so it's even more, it's so amazing what this body of land can do.
Yeah, and it just shows you how interconnected nature is, and when one part is thrown off, then all these other parts are just are thrown off too. And we're talking about climate change, and here we are destroying our oceans. That could be make a huge impact in leveling the climate. But yeah, so I definitely agree with you and share your passion. Okay, so right now we're just gonna go around and give any lasting advice you have for new entrepreneurs looking to start a career or start a business in the green space. We'll go back to Anne Marie. Any lasting advice that you'd like to give to future entrepreneurs in this session?
So, I'm kind of reading the chat as we go along here, and I saw someone mentioned or asked about resources. The reality is that the internet has a lot. The this is something that I suggest, is to find somebody who is in the field that you're doing or that you're considering, and potentially interview them. You know, we talk about podcasts. What if there's a podcast that doesn't exist for what it is that you have? You have to now become that person to go and ask questions and to find out certain things. And, you know, depending on where somebody is in their business, you will find, you know, the people who have excelled, or I guess are at a point where, you know, they're not so consumed with the day in, day out on a daily basis, may be able or willing to help you. But I think it's so important to have a mentor. It's so important to have somebody who you can potentially even bounce ideas off of. I would highly suggest even joining different networks when it comes to, you know, entrepreneurship, because you know, going back to what Suzanne was saying, that when people told you no, I ended up having the same thing. People told me, hey, that's not a viable business. I don't see how you're going to make money on that, and all the noise. And sometimes I had to like take what they were saying, but then kind of filter out, and to, like she said, you know, kind of stick to your guns for what you're doing. You know, some people don't realize the importance of having a business plan, but the business plan is something that allows you to really get your thoughts on paper. And it's not something that's going to stay static forever. It's a dynamic document. It will change as you grow. But the goal is for you to go back and look at it and, you know, see where your mind was when you were initially passionate about starting your business. And I think a book that I would suggest is called The E-Myth Revisited, because it really got me clear on my why. There's some people who will do it because they say, oh, you know, I want more time. That's usually not the reason that for you to start a business, because you end up working twice the amount of hours for less pay. That's, you know, so that's kind of to demyth the idea about seeing if you can get more time. If you're doing it because you think that, you know, you just hate your boss, maybe there's something that, you know, there's for you, something that's there for you to even work on potentially with yourself, because maybe it's your own communication, you know. So it's all these things. I know when I left my job, I was very upset initially. And what it is that I did is that I said, before I leave, I want to make sure that this person will regret like, I have to make amends with him, because if I don't do this, I won't be challenging myself to be effective with my communication and to actually show what it is that I'm worth. So everybody's going to encounter different things, but those are just some of my suggestions.
I 100% agree with you. Starting with interview someone in your field, because it doesn't matter how many podcasts that you watch, you have no idea about, you know, starting a business till you actually started, and having someone who's done it before, who can give you like advice in the exact field that you're looking to work in is priceless. I don't think there's any podcast that can address that. You definitely won't know until you start. And yeah, sticking with your guns and what you want to do, because I mean, there's always going to be naysayers. You know, they're going to be naysayers, and you're like, oh, why are you doing that? Just stick with your normal job, your 9 to 5. You know, there's too much instability. Stick to your guns and do what you love. And definitely don't do it because you think that you're gonna get more time, or that, you know, you're gonna be your own boss. So, you know, it's better, because sometimes it's like you're gonna be the boss and other people are gonna hate you. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Okay. So Crystal, any lasting advice that you'd want to give to new entrepreneurs looking to start a business in the green space?
Yeah, so like I was gonna say some something like a little bit different, like a different aspect, but I just really love Anne-Marie's response. So I'm just gonna add on to that aspect is I wanna touch on communication skills because sometimes that's just not there for some people. And if you're an entrepreneur, that really needs to be there because that is connected also to sales and also like your ability to bring that business into fruition. Because sometimes like I'm not an investor and I'm not like the CEO, but I'm just a mentor, and I just hear some of the communication skills and I can see like the struggle, how that connects to the sales. Because I'm going to give you an example is like part of good communication skills is like being able to ask good questions. And when I think of one aspect of good questions, I think it's questions that challenge you, not like questions that don't take you like they have to be questions that are genuinely you're trying to push something forward, like a mission, not just like something that's like confirmation bias questions. Like I don't like hearing things like, oh, asking a question like why is no one investing? Why doesn't anybody want to tell me like what's their pain point? How am I going to sell it? Like those are not questions. Like those are just not really the type of questions that we're talking about when we're talking about questions. Like we need to ask questions like okay, so for example, why no one tells you your pain points? Well, one way to frame that is who inside the market that I'm interested in would be interested in my product? And then you can ask, what are the pain points that you're trying to solve? And if you're trying to solve a pain point within the construction side, and you've been asking like someone on like the CFO, like this is just like a very simple example. Then you need to go ask the construction people. Like so, if you're not able to ask good questions, like you'll never get out of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Communication is probably one of the most important things that you need to have as an entrepreneur, because when you start a when you start a startup or a new business, there's a lot of things happening. Things are happening so fast. So if you don't know if you don't have good communication skills, things will just fall apart. I've worked for a couple of startups in the past, and that's probably one of the biggest problems that I've seen is communication. Everybody's here, there, and everywhere doing different types of things, and nobody can hone in on the problem that needs to be addressed and create a linear path to do it, which leads to a lot of headaches and miscommunication and so many problems. So I definitely agree with you on that, Chris. Sorry. Mike, what advice would you like to give to our entrepreneurs and the audience about solar, energy storage, real estate?
Um, I, I think I would say learn to get comfortable with failure. I think a lot of people, have this idea of an entrepreneur in their head as, someone who saw further than everybody else or had this bright idea, that no one else was able to intuit. And I'm sure those people are out there. Maybe some of the other panelists are those people. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs, stumbled on something that nobody else knew how to do or nobody else knew how to make because they tried and failed a bunch of times, and that's how they, um, you know, explored something that other people hadn't done before and hadn't been able to make work before. And I would just say get really comfortable with that and learn to embrace it, because that's most likely the way that you will learn how to create a business that is unique and does something or makes something that no one else knows how to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I'm friends with a lot of people who are in that space and creating a business. And yeah, failure is definitely something that you have to kind of just know that that's a given. Because I heard somewhere that 90% of businesses fail. and that could be due to a whole host of different things. And I think it was Anne Marie that talked about, or maybe it was Suzanne that talked about having a lengthy timeline where you want to, give yourself time to grow. If you don't do that and you kind of throw in the towel after the first year, it's just you're not going to prosper. So yeah, failure. Definitely agree with you. Entrepreneurs need to have that on the background. All right, Suzanne, any lasting advice you'd like to give to our audience, future entrepreneurs in the audience?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to be a sponge. When you start with this idea, you should go in like a fool. Like, and I say fool as in like go in like you may not know exactly everything. Talk to people in your network, people who might have worked, again, depending on what your industry is in, but people in marketing, strategy, consulting, within your industry, anyone that you've ever met in your past, schedule a time with them, catch up, just kind of, and this is what I typically do even now. I'll just kind of like throw this idea out, get feedback, hear what people are saying. Sometimes people might give you advice. Other people might say, hey, I might have someone that you should speak to. Let me put you in contact with them. But it's really about building your network and learning. You don't want to overstep your boundary if someone's doing consulting in your field and they charge for that, then you need to be respectful, but, be a sponge and just learn what you can learn, but also know when to heed advice. So when to kind of take their advice, and then also when to say like, thank you so much for your thoughts. And in your mind, you're like, I think my vision is a little different than theirs, but that's okay. The second thing is to be authentic. I think being a woman, a Latina woman CEO is uncommon. And my company, MamaP, we have 75% of our leadership team are women of color. Over 66% are minorities. And so for our company, we are breaking a lot of barriers in how we communicate, how we come across. And I let my team know that it's okay to be authentically themselves. They don't have to put themselves into a box to come across a certain way. I think business is changing. People are changing, especially over the pandemic. A lot of issues have come to the surface. And so if there's anyone out there who fits into a minority of any sort, just know that to be authentically yourself, not everyone will accept you for who you are, but that's okay, because they don't matter. They won't matter to you in the future. But people will gravitate to you for being authentically yourself, especially for minorities out there of any sort. And I'll say minorities like age, demographic, race, gender, disability, whatever it is. Just keep being yourself. And then I think, as you're building your team, as a startup, you won't be paying the highest salaries. So hire for potential and hire for passion. Those are the most important aspects of building a team, knowing that your team will be very passionate about your mission and they have potential to grow with you, because they'll stick with you and they'll start believing in your mission and being right beside you as you're going into battle. It's really, really important to have those two aspects. And then I think the last part, more like brass tacks, if you're still employed, before you venture out to be an entrepreneur, apply for a line of credit for your business, apply for a business loan just to have, in case, write your business plan if you need to start pitching to investors for early seed capital. But, a lot of these foundational elements are important. And then also know when something does not fall into your expertise, like lawyers, making sure that you have your operating agreement in place or shareholder agreement, making sure that you have your corporate forms or LLC forms in place, and also making sure that your books are in order. So you don't have to be an accountant. I think, you could hire someone who does it quarterly for you, but just know when something does not fall into your expertise, because it can hurt you in the long run if you don't have the solid foundation in the early stages. So That's all that I have for advice.
I I hope that people are taking notes. If you're looking to start a business, this is like amazing advice that you're getting from our panelists. Yeah, I think your advice about getting your logistics together before you quit your job is, I think that's probably one of the best advice out there, because I'm friends with a lot of people who try to start their own businesses, and they just like plunge right into it and have the foundation to be successful, and it really did come back to bite them. So I think that's like really great advice. I think that being a sponge, like you said, you have to really just learn all out, because you're going to be wearing multiple hats. So you have to learn from different people, from different industries on how things work. And I think, yeah, being yourself, probably, you're going into doing something that you love, I hope. So why would you want to put on a facade that, at the end of the day, you're not going to be happy with, and you're going to be a completely different person? So definitely agree with you. So we're going to open it up to Q&A. Anne, are you there?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
awesome.
there, and there are two questions in the chat. And the first was a request for resources, whether it's books, journals, podcasts, magazines, websites, etc. And we did have some response to that. And before I turned it over to the panelists, I'd just like to say, I'm not sure if this is true now, but before the pandemic, for anybody in the New York City area, there were two fantastic sources of help. One of them is the New York Public Library. And the Science Industry Business Library used to be at 34th Street and Madison Avenue. It's now moved into the new branch at 40th Street and 5th, which I think is named for Stavros Niarchos. And I did look at there, and they're doing some online classes. Now, I was there for job hunting, but I know they support small business. The other thing is the Small Business Administration, which is down on 26th Street. And they also had, I was looking into consulting, they also have a lot of classes, seminars, etc. And again, I don't know what's going on because of the pandemic, but they were two absolutely super resources, both in and of themselves, and also because when you're going to a group event, you start talking to the other people there, so it becomes a networking opportunity, and you never know who's going to run into. So I'm going to turn this over to the panelists, and maybe some of the other participants also have suggestions.
Okay. Any of the panelists want to talk about resources? This is just like anybody can answer.
Yeah, I'll echo what Anne was saying. So the SBA, I used that early on. There's also like a women's center for any women entrepreneurs. They also have a few other minority chapters, but the SBA, they have chapters across the US. So wherever you're based, if it's in Brooklyn, Manhattan, Jersey, or anywhere else in the US, they have local chapters, and they typically have sessions. So it could be how to write a business plan, what should your marketing strategy be, and they'll have sessions to have someone teach you and guide you through whatever that subject is. They also partner, this is specifically with the NYC area SBA, but they'll partner with pro bono lawyers in the city. And a lot of law firms, I believe it's a requirement that they have to offer pro bono for businesses. And so for my business, I actually had a very prestigious law firm partner, and then he brought on an associate. They helped to write my operating agreement for my business, and it was ironclad. It was amazing, and it was completely free because I was a small business registered in NYC.
Yeah, and oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say that SBA was also helpful to us in connecting us with some of the state insurance funds, which are available in New York State, but also many other states have them. As a construction company, that was one of the biggest challenges starting up was getting someone to insure us as a new business, and both SBA and NYSIF, which is the New York State Insurance Fund, were really helpful to us.
I also looked onto the SBA, and I was able to get a lot of online classes. So they do have a lot of resources and things that you can, at least the videos that they have will help you get clarity on what it is that you want to do, because it will help you kind of guide your thoughts to different things. It actually showed me like the bell curve on adaptation, which kind of really gave me a little more perspective. I had to come to realize that my industry was part of the late adopters. So then, your approach on how you actually have to sell to people will reflect on where they're at. A new product comes in, and if somebody has to purchase something, you can go to a store and you can buy something immediately. Or if it's a device it's a mobile device, you can potentially purchase it and have it there. But when it comes to infrastructure, it's something that people it takes a longer period of time. So like, I know Mike could potentially, relate to that, because, in construction, from the planning stage to by the time it actually gets to execution and implementation, it's a whole process, and then so many different people that has to come along that chain before it actually comes to fruition. So it gives you a better understanding of where you're at mentally.
Mike, did you want to say something or?
No.
All right. Anne, are you?
Yeah, there was one more question, which may have been addressed in the beginning, but people may have come in late. The turning points at which people decided to go all in on their ideas and turning them into a company. I guess the aha moment, the moment when what put you over to the, yes, I'm definitely going to do this?
I think I'll jump in here for this one. I think I kind of mentioned that my boss had gotten me upset, but I knew that wasn't a reason to do it, to leave. I also had to really get clear on my why. It's sort of like one of the advice that was given to me is that if everything was paid for, every single thing that you had was already paid for and everything was taken care of, what is the ideal? What is the thing that's going to inspire you to wake up every single day? And I had to really put some thought into that, because, I had different aspects of the business that I could have turned to. There was an option for, working on the commissioning side. There was an opportunity on different things. And I chose the training because the reality is that, it's one thing when you have to go and you have a boss waiting for you, and they're kind of like over your shoulder, and you have to conform to that. You have to show up because somebody's looking after you. But when you have to look after yourself, it's a whole different dynamics that happens. So the getting clarity on if this is something that's going to make you want to wake up every single day to do, I knew, like I said, training was the thing. And, are you going to have the tenacity to continue going when you get all of the no's? So the turning point is when you really make a decision, because you could be thinking about it for years and years and years, but you can't have one foot in the pool and one foot out. You have to, either jump in completely. And now if you don't plan accordingly, there will be failures. But then going back to, what Mike had said, you have to be prepared for that failure. So that's just my advice there.
I think for me, my turning point, and I mean, I'm a bit more bullish just in my life. Like, you know, when I'm at the ocean, I just run into the water and jump in it. So it's my approach with everything. So for me, I knew I was going to buy 5,000 units for my first order, which is a small order now where we are today. But in my mind, I was like, you know what? Either I'm going to sell all of our units. You know, I felt so passionate about this as I spoke with people. You know, I was going to just start small and not really tell people, just kind of start selling online. And the more people that I spoke to, the more people were like, hey, like, where can I buy that? And I'm like, oh, it's an idea right now. And they're like, oh, well, can you let me know so I can, you know, buy this? I want to be part of this thing that you're building. And so for me, I just kind of went with it. And I was like, okay, well, you know, either I'll have 5,000 toothbrushes for the rest of my life and I'll give them out. Everyone gets them for holidays, for birthdays, you know, or I'll sell out and I'll reorder and, you know, we'll do well. If I failed, I wanted to fail fast and I would just go back to work, you know, go back and find a new job. If I succeeded, then I know that it would be a long road ahead to build the business and scale. So that was kind of my take on it. I was like, it's fail fast or succeed and go.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go have our panelists.
We're getting some concrete questions, substantive for some of the panelists. Do we have time to address them?
We don't have that much time, but what we can do is we can have our anybody in the audience directly reach out to the panelists. That's going to be my next segue, asking the panelists the best way to reach out to you. If you want to write something in the chat so everybody can kind of copy it down and they can, you know, reach out to you or, you know, connect with you on social media. That would be awesome. Okay. Okay, so yeah, you can just write it in the chat, and I'm gonna actually hand it off to Paul, who's gonna wrap up with information about Green Home NYC and how to get in contact with us. I want to thank all our panelists for being amazing and giving a great advice to future entrepreneurs. You never know, your advice that you gave today could lead to blossoming green sector industry. And we really thank you for that. So
excellent.
Paul?
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you for moderating. And excellent, and I reiterate Crystal's thanks and appreciation for the panelists. Excellent insight into entrepreneurship, really appreciate that. I'm Paul Reale, I'm Vice President of Green Home NYC on the board, and I'm just here to wrap it up for you tonight. Green Home NYC is a volunteer organization. We have no paid staff members. We have no offices. We are an absolutely virtual organization, and we've been at it for, I think, 15 years now, 16 years. And we run events on green careers like this one. We do 6 to 9 of these per year. We do a forums event, probably about 10 of those, maybe 9 or 10 of those per year. These are typically monthly events, as well as green tours. And you can think of Green Home NYC as really your information hub for all people, for all things sustainable during this remarkable transformation to a sustainable future for New York City. We have a couple of events coming up, so I'm just going to announce those, and then we'll wrap up. I'm about to share this screen with you. If I can do that, yes, I can. And here is my screen. So for our upcoming forum events, we have Storing Solar Energy. That's Wednesday, October 20th. Again, 6:30 to 8 is our standard time for events. Heat pump conversion on Wednesday, November 17th. And by the way, during our forum events, or just before our forum events, that's when we have our volunteer orientation. That's from 6 to 6:30, just before our forum events. If anyone is interested in volunteering, of course, we would love to have you volunteer. to do things like what Crystal is doing, what Ann is doing, what I do, to get involved in the organization. We also have another Green Careers event coming up. Next month, we're going to be talking about vocational careers. And in November, on Wednesday, the 17th, we have our annual planning meeting, which is open to anyone to have input into that program. So if you're interested in that, you can email greencareers@greenhomenyc.org. Lots more information at greenhomenyc.org for more information on our programs, our events, and everything else that we do. So thank you so much for attending this evening. Thank you again to our panelists for your expert input. Really been fantastic, and Crystal for moderating, and Ann for being our Zoom bouncer. Thanks so much. Have a great night.